Welcome to the final episode of our Genius Guide series in preparation for Little Sugar MTB. I'm your host, Rich Drew. And to this point, well, we've gotten you dialed in on the perfect places to stay here in Bella Vista. We've talked about some key setup elements to help you deal with these incredibly challenging courses. And we've set you up to come into race day with the most confidence possible with our technique video. Now, it's time to wrap a bow on this thing and give you the final piece of the puzzle so you can have the ride of a lifetime. In this video, we're gonna dive into the top 10 crux spots on these courses and arm you with the knowledge needed to formulate the ultimate race day plan. Now, I know I shouldn't need to ask, but I will. Are you ready? Okay, first things first, we need to reiterate a few items that are gonna be critically important to every competitor come race day. Now, the first is, well, have your hydration and fueling plan in place and ready to go. As they say, eat early and eat often. Know where the aid stations are and make sure you're staying on top of that, because bonking halfway through this race, well, it's just not acceptable at this stage of the game. Next is relax. You're here hopefully to have fun. And the way you're gonna do that is to find a nice, comfortable body position that you can maintain for the majority of the race. The more tense you are, the more crouched down you are on the bike when you don't need to be, well, the more energy it's gonna zap from you. And the way you're gonna make this happen, well, it's my next item, and that's by looking ahead. Keep your eyes up. It's gonna be the one thing that will make the biggest impact throughout the course of this race. Now look, I'm about to cover 10 spots that are gonna be pretty tough to deal with potentially. If you're looking off the front tire, guess what? You're not gonna see them coming. Now lastly, and this is for everybody, regardless of course, you better be prepared to deal with some loose terrain. It's all over these courses, and I'll tell you what, it's unrelenting. Upfront disclaimer, there's probably a couple hundred crux spots on these courses, but for the sake of time, we had to narrow it down to 10, and here they are. Okay, crux number 1. Well, it's that first big climb about 3 miles after the start. Now, this is a defining moment. You're gonna go all in with your chips to solidify a solid position heading into the single track, or are you gonna temper the output to make sure you have plenty left in the tank come later in the race? Be prepared, because this one gets pretty steep about halfway up, and it doesn't really relent until you're close to the top. In addition, the trail starts to get narrow and becomes a bit looser as you get closer to the start of the single track. Crux number 2, it's the entry into the single track. This is where things get real loose. The heart rate is as high as the adrenaline, and now you're about to drop in on that infamous Bella Vista loose over hard terrain and experience those infamous switchbacks. My advice is don't rush it, be tactical, and get through this initial salvo and find your pace. Crux number 3 is what I'm calling the Lake Windsor crossover. Yeah, you've had a few climbs by this point, but this one, well, it just hits differently in my opinion. At about 11 miles in on the 100K course, this is one of the most sustained climbs you'll experience, and grades can vary from 4 to 24%. Now be sure to manage this one strategically, because it gets loose and steep, and you still have well over 3/4 of the race left to go. Crux number 4, well, it's a little segment known as technical difficulty. Another defining moment. But remember, this section of trail is only 1.4 miles in a 62-mile race course. You're gonna focus on looking ahead so you can choose your best line and be prepared for a few key spots. Now, the first one is right after you roll over the bridge. You're gonna come through a rock outcropping. Now, be ready for some square edge spots that are looking to rob your momentum. From there, it's a narrow climb with a tricky root section that you can either float over, or I suggest sticking that foot out for a little added stability. last but certainly not least, you have some incredibly loose switchbacks. Now these ones, they can catch you, so my advice is have some patience and maintain technique, because an errant slip out here, well, that could really cost you. Crux number 5, well, it's the Sugar Bridge. While unassuming and picturesque, this one caught a few folks out last year. If the sun's out and the course is dry, you probably don't have much to worry about. But if we're dealing with a little bit of rain and potentially muddy conditions, it's probably best to slow your roll and be precise to avoid going down. Crux number 6. This is the entry back into Blowing Springs. This one's specifically for you 50K riders. Now, take heed, that right-hand turn coming back in sneaks up on you and it's pretty darn loose. After that, you got a high-speed section with a couple of rock shelf drops. Remember, eyes up, centered over the bike, and have fun. Don't come in looking down with the hips back, making it more challenging than it has to be. Crux number 7. This one is a series of rock drops on Taylor Homestead. At this point, you're deep into the 100K, and this spot can change your trajectory in an instant. How do you deal with it? Simple. Come in, high eyes, centered over the bike, heavy feet, look where you want to go. What you don't want to do is come in with that dropper up, hips back, looking off the front tire. Crux number 8. No, it's the infamous ledges. Well, what do I say about this section? Its reputation precedes it, and for good reason. The ledges is difficult in the best of scenarios, and the chances of slashing a tire or sliding off a wet rock are higher here than anywhere on this course. Prepare yourself mentally based on how you're doing physically and give this spot the utmost in respect. Crux number 9. Well, it's one of my favorite sections in Bella Vista, Mighty Pine. Although a beautiful section of trail, this one, it can be tough. Be prepared for a pesky, loose right-hand turn about halfway through this one. After that, it gets even more challenging, as this might be the most narrow portion of trail that you'll experience in the entire race course. All right, last but certainly not least, crux number 10, well, it's the castle. At this point, you can almost taste the finish, but standing in your way is a brutal switchback climb. Now be prepared, because when you get to the top, it's time to drop in from the castle on catapult. Now, rule number 1 here, well, don't get catapulted. Stay relaxed, stay centered over the bike, enjoy the flow, and decide if you want to hit some jumps or if you want to slow down and maneuver over them as safely as possible so you can make your way to the finish. Either way, try to have some fun, because at this stage of the race, well, you've earned it. There you go, the top 10 cruxes that we could come up with on these courses. Now, granted, there's probably a lot more, but in the time I've spent riding it, I can tell you, I think these are going to be key areas. And hopefully this information, man, it helped arm you to make that race day plan. Now, I want to give a big thank you to Discover Bella Vista for providing this Genius Guide series, and I want to thank you for coming along on this journey. It's been really fun, and quite honestly, I think it's helped get me a little bit more prepared for race day. And yes, I will be racing the 100K. So I'm excited to share that experience with everybody. And I'm also excited to provide one more opportunity for you to really get things dialed in. We're gonna be executing some Ride Series breakout skill sessions on the Thursday and Friday before the event. Details coming soon. It's time to close this series out with a good luck and to let you know that I'm looking forward to seeing you out there on race day for Little Sugar, where you're gonna go have the ride of a lifetime.